think that's it. DeSoto in Georgia. So let's pick up where we left off yesterday. There's about a 5.5 minute little video that will reinforce some of the things that we talked about yesterday regarding Hernando de Soto. Again, not a pleasant person historically. I think you can put him in a list with Genghis Khan, with Hitler, with people of that nature. Maybe not the same scale, but certainly he was an evil man.
Not that easy, but Grammarly can help. This sentence is grammatically correct.
Hernando de Soto was a conquistador. By the time De Soto came to Georgia in 1540, he was already a wealthy man. He had gotten rich fighting in South America and taking part in the conquest of the Inca Empire. When he came to the Southeastern United States looking for even more riches, exploration and discovery. Today it means a voyage to the planets, a journey to the moon and the stars. We explore because there is in all of us a need to know more, a curiosity about the universe and how it was made and where we came from. But 500 years ago, exploration meant crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Discovery meant finding gold. And that's what Hernando de Soto was looking for when he came to the southeastern United States, to a place we call La Florida.
And reports of gold being in Florida in the hands of native people. What they didn't realize is that that gold had come off Spanish ships that had wrecked on the coast of Florida and had been salvaged by the Native Americans. So yes, some of the Native Americans had gold, but it wasn't mined.
Inevitably, De Soto's search for gold led to war. But he only had 600 men, and he faced thousands of Native Americans. How could he win against such terrible odds?
With them, they brought their weapons, which were the state-of-the-art weapons of the 16th century. I think the two most devastating weapons were first the war dogs, the attack dogs that were trained to attack people, and also the war horses. There were knights who came with their servants and their armor and their weapons, and those armored knights would be mounted on horses that were also armored in some fashion. And essentially it was a Sherman tank of the day. A Native American with a club or a spear or a bow and arrow was not necessarily a very good opponent for one of these tank-like mounted knights. Today, dogs are our pets, and we like little dogs. Back then, dogs were also pets, but then they were used for hunting and for attack purposes. Large mastiff-like dogs were trained to attack Native Americans and could tear them limb to limb. Sure, they were cruel, and when the other Indians saw them do this, most likely they then would bend to the will of the Spanish. The Native Americans tried repeatedly to defeat the Spanish, but first, most of the Native American weapons, you really need to get pretty close, and because of the war dogs, the horses, they just weren't successful.
How do we know what happened to De Soto's expedition 450 years ago? At least 3 of the people who traveled with him kept journals. These journals, or chronicles, describe a terrible battle near Mobile in Alabama where De Soto was ambushed.
They counted up and chronicles reported thousands of Native Americans were killed. Must have been an incredible, horrendous battle. The Spaniards lost a lot of their supplies and equipment, but they were able to get out of this ambush and to survive.
In the end, his expedition was a failure. De Soto never found any gold. His legacy was one of disease and cruelty and death. But at At least there is this. The journals of his expedition kept alive the names and stories of the native people he encountered.
When Fernando de Soto went through the Oconee River Valley, which is where we're excavating, he encountered a chieftain, or something like a kingdom in medieval Europe, that was known as Okuto. And that was the name of the people that lived at Raccoon Ridge. Now, the people at Raccoon Ridge probably paid their tribute, their allegiance, to a local chief known as Popaki. And we have those names because De Soto actually went there.
But in many instances, the only reason we know that some of those Native American groups existed, many of those Native American groups existed, is because information about them is recorded in the accounts of the De Soto expedition. I think that's his most important legacy, what he tells us about the past, although he helped to destroy that past.
So do you feel any better about De Soto now?
There are still lots of
No.
I'd like you to see in this state.
Probably not.
Recorded in the accounts of the De Soto expedition.
I'll get rid of that. And go back right there. Okay. So we did talk about De Soto yesterday. We talked about his journey. If you'll remember, we looked at the map, and you could see that he really covered much of the Southeast, including probably this area right here. Probably. Oop, wrong one. Okay. This area that we live in, right in front of the old library, across from the old courthouse, is this historical marker. Basically, it says, if you can't read it from where you sit, in May of 1539, Fernando de Soto landed in Florida with over 600 people, 220 horses and mules, and a swine reserved for famine. Fired by his success in Pizarro's conquest of Peru, Soto had been granted by the King of Spain to explore, then govern Southeastern North America. In Tallahassee, the De Soto expedition set out on a quest for gold, which eventually spanned 4 years and crossed portions of the states. This was the first recorded exploration of the interior of the Southeast, including De Soto in 1542. Changed the lives of the Indians who were infected with old, made destitute, and sometimes scholars believe this was the general area where the De Soto expedition visited April 3rd through the 6th, 1540. The Indians of the chiefdom of Altamaha ferried the Spanish across a large river in dugout canoes. The expedition next traveled northeastward and visited the town of the paramount chief, Okute. And we just heard about Okute. And again, we know this. We know certain things about De Soto's expedition because people wrote it down. People kept journals. It's kind of like if your parents were to send you to Europe after you graduate from high school so you can hike in Europe. You probably keep a journal so you could remember what happened when you come home to tell your stories. Or when you're old and gray like me, you could go back and remember. Don't you laugh at me. Did he just laugh at me? No? You're going to be old and gray one day. I hope so. All right. Let's go back. So, a couple of other Spaniards. The first one, Tristan De Luna. Somewhere between 1559 and that should read 1600s, the Spaniards established a colony near what is now Pensacola, Florida. They were looking for what had been described in De Soto's journals. They were looking for these great villages, these great towns that existed that had been built by the Mississippian Indians. The Coosa tribe is one of those. By the time De Luna gets to where the Coosa tribe is, they have been suffering from famine, very little food. In 1539, there were like 500 households, and you can maybe figure out the math there. If there are 4 people in each household, that's how many people? 2,000. Thank you. 2,000. By the time De Luna visits 20 years later, 20 some odd years later, that has been reduced to 50 households. So maybe from, if we're being conservative, 2,000 people down to about 200. Part of that's because of De Soto himself, disease brought by him, the violence that he inflicted upon the Native Americans. Whatever the cause, that great civilization that existed at one point in time no longer exists. Pedro Menendez, if you know where the St. Johns River is, that is near Jacksonville. It's part of the Intercoastal Waterway. He destroyed a French outpost called Fort Caroline right there. He is the guy that built St. Augustine. How many of y'all been to St. Augustine? What do we remember St. Augustine for? Come on. 1567, 8, somewhere in that time frame maybe, it was built. Was there any other city in what became the United States? Shake your head no. I don't see you shaking your heads. No, there was not. So St. Augustine holds the distinction of being the oldest city in the United States. It's here that Menendez encounters a group of people called the Wally Indians. I know it's spelled Gwali, but it is pronounced Wally. They are a tribe of Creek Indians that live along the Georgia coast down to the Florida border and into Florida. And they become a very important player. They become very important in what happens to the Spaniards in Georgia, and we'll see what that is in just a few minutes, perhaps. All right. One of our questions, one of the essential questions we asked yesterday was, what happened to the Spanish missions? What was their purpose, first of all? Where were they located, and what happened to them? And we're going to answer that question right now. They were actually the first settlements in Georgia. They were established from beginning in 1568. By 1684, they're gone. So something happened to them over the course of a little more than 100 years. Something happens to these Spanish missions. They had a religious purpose. The mission was not seeking to find riches. The mission was established because of a religious purpose. They were there to convert the Indians to Christianity. What do you take with you when you migrate, when you move from one place to another? You take your culture. Religion is part of your culture. And so the Europeans bring their culture, their religion, to North America, to the Native Americans. So it really has two purposes. The first, and as far as the church is concerned, the most important is to convert the Indians. But there's a second purpose, and that's so that Spain could occupy, hold, and settle the Georgia frontier. They want to be a presence because they want that land. They want that territory. It sits above Florida. They're in firm control of Florida, but they want Georgia as well. And so they want to occupy it, they want to hold it, and they want to settle it. And it worked until the British got involved. Who's the dominant world power at this time? Spain. Great Britain wants to be. England wants to be the greatest power. And what had Pope Alexander VI done? Talked about him yesterday. What did he do? What?
He drew all those lines to say who had this.
The line of demarcation, you remember that? Okay, everything to the west was Spanish, everything to the east was Portugal, and ultimately it becomes everything to the west is Spain, and that was pretty much everything, right? Okay, why did Pope Alexander get involved? They were both Catholic nations, okay, Catholic countries. So why are the British infringing upon Spanish territory?
Because they won.
Want it. Why aren't they paying attention to the Pope? Because they're not Catholic. That's exactly right. They had been Catholic, and now the church in England is called the Church of England or the Anglican Church. And so they're not going to listen to the Pope. And so they go to North America. They explore. They end up colonizing North America. There were two main provinces in the area where we find the Spanish missions. The first is the Wally, and that's the northern part. I think there's a map in here somewhere. And the southern part would be called the Mocama. And again, they play a very important role in what happens to the Spanish missions. Would you like to know what happened to the Spanish missions? Yes. It's full of intrigue. It's full of mystery. It's full of violence. It's like a soap opera.
They don't even know
What happened?
It was a rebellion.
Yeah, I kind of gave that away. All right. So here, and you have to memorize this list, by the way. Yeah. Just kidding. Here you would see the Spanish missions. Okay? San Diego. San Diego's not in Georgia, is it? It's in California. But they used the same name. And in fact, San Diego was started as a Spanish mission in California. San Antonio. Anybody ever been to San Antonio? What's in San Antonio? The albino. What? Alamo? Is that what you're trying to spit out? Remember the albino! This doesn't have a good ring, does it? No, it's just not right. The Alamo. Started as a Spanish mission. And so you can see there were actually several. Most of them are on the coast. There are a few that make it inland. But for the most part, Spain is relegated to the coast of Georgia. Here's the Wally right here, and then the Macamo down in this area closer to Florida. And again, they both play an incredibly important role in what happens to the Spanish missions. Here's another map. You can see the Wally here, the Mocama here, and then different missions. Again, their purpose is to convert the Indians to Christianity. So they convert the Wally, they convert the Mocama. And again, they want to hold it. They want to start communities, towns where the Spaniards can live. All right. What we got? Juanillo. And here's where the soap opera begins. It's actually an interesting story. It's a very intriguing story. And it's a story about what happens when one culture tries to impose itself on another culture. Again, intrigue, mystery, murder, violence, war. 1597. Juanillo is a Wally Indian. He is next in line to become the chief. So he is a pretty important person in his tribe. But Juanillo has a problem. He has 2 wives. Now, we look at that and we go, oh my gosh, that's terrible. But honestly, you go back and you read the Old Testament and you find out that Solomon had, no, he had hundreds of wives. So it's cultural, isn't it? Okay? It is cultural. And Juanillo is just simply following the customs of his culture. Can we say he was wrong? That's his belief system. That's his culture. Boop. The missionaries don't like that. The missionaries dislike this practice of polygamy or numerous wives or husbands, I suppose, whatever the case may be. They don't like it. And because they don't like it, they declare Juanillo unfit to be chief, and somebody else is chosen. So what did the missionaries do? They stole his right to be chief. They stole his birthright. They did. Birthright. Your birthright is something that you are guaranteed simply because you were born. Kind of. But in this case,
So they took away his guarantee.
They took away his guarantee to be what? Chief. It's like in England, you know, if the king or queen of England who's sitting on the throne dies and there's somebody who is supposed to follow them, and for some reason that right is taken away from them. So Juanillo, to put it in some popular vernacular, Juanillo got the shaft. He was shafted. He was treated unfairly, simply because he did something the missionaries didn't like. So Juanillo does what any red-blooded American male would do. He became angry. In fact, I think he's beyond angry. He is, I use the word furious. He is incredibly upset that the missionaries have done this to him. And so, again, he does what a lot of red-blooded American males would do. He got an army together. An army of Wally Indians, and he executes 5 of the missionaries. Just kills them outright. Steal my birthright, will you? Had he been able to find more, he would have killed more. To kill them all. Just take care of the problem. Kill all of them. But the Mocama Indians step in and help the Spaniards. And they're able to put the rebellion down. And of course, you can imagine what happened to Juanillo.
I think he might have died.
Pretty safe bet that he died. No guillotine. It wasn't the French. The guillotine wasn't invented yet. So this is what Juanillo said. And how do we know this is what he said? Somebody wrote it down. But let's kind of walk through this. And there's things that you might want to underline, notate as we do this. Maybe. I'm not going to be able to write things down. Okay. So I think you have that in your, you do have that in your notes. Now, this is what Juanillo says. Now the friar is dead. The friar would be a priest. A lot of different names for him, but friar. Now the friar is dead. This would not have happened if he had allowed us to live according to our pre-Christian manner. Now let's stop right there a second. What is Juanillo saying about himself in this sentence? This would not have happened if he had allowed us to live according to our pre-Christian manner.
He said.
What? Is that what he's saying? Or is he saying the exact opposite? He's saying the exact opposite. Before we were Christians. So Juanillo identifies as a believer in Christ. Kind of hard to believe, isn't it? Actually, it's not all that hard to believe when you look at the history of the church. So what does he say? He says, let us return to our ancient customs. Let us provide for our defense against the punishment which the governor of Florida will mete out. For he will punish us as severely for having killed one friar as if we had killed them all. Yes.
So you believe in God and kill the people who talk about it?
I'd say it made sense. I'm just telling you what happened. Juanillo does identify as a Christian, and there's some more evidence to support that. He identifies as a Christian. He's not saying, I don't believe in Christ. I reject that faith. He's saying basically this: they should not have come in and changed everything about it, or tried to change everything about our culture. And this line, for he will punish us as severely for having killed one friar as if we had killed them all. He really wanted to kill them all. Kill one, I might as well. The punishment's the same regardless. And he says that right here. Consequently, since the punishment for killing one friar must be equally severe as for killing all, let us restore our ancient liberty of which these friars deprive us. And then he lists the things that have been taken from them. They take away from us our women, allowing us but one, forbidding us to exchange them for others. You don't like your wife, you can trade her in on a new model. Or, you like your neighbor's wife better than yours, he likes yours, you just swap them. They prohibit us from having our dances, banquets, feasts, celebrations, games, and wars, in order that, being deprived of these, we might lose our ancient valor and skill, which we have inherited from our ancestors. So, in that sentence, they prohibit us from having our dances, blah, 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 blah. What is Juanillo really saying? They have taken away what? Our culture. And I don't like it. They persecute our old men, calling them wizards. They are not satisfied with our labor, for they hinder us from performing it on certain days. Even when we are willing to do all they tell us, they remain unsatisfied. All they do is to reprimand us, treat us in an injurious manner, oppress us, preach to us, and call us bad Christians. What does Juanillo identify as? He identifies as a Christian. He gets the idea of Jesus. He likes that idea. What he doesn't like is that the Europeans have come in and taken away his culture. What have we to hope for except to become slaves? If we kill them all now, we will throw off this intolerable yoke. The governor will perceive our valor and will be forced to treat us well in the event that he should get the better of us. And there's a question mark there for some reason. So what did the Europeans do? What did the Spaniards do? First of all, they did what? They converted them to Christianity. And then what? Destroyed their culture. What are they trying to turn them into? Europeans. They're trying to turn them into little Spaniards rather than being Native Americans. Yes. White trash Europeans. Exactly. It's easy for us to go, well, Juanillo didn't handle that very well. Maybe he didn't. But he handled it in the only way he thought he could. And that was to get the attention of the governor of Florida by killing these friars. And he ends up killing 5, as we said earlier. And then, of course, Juanillo is killed during battle with the Papua Indians. All right. By the way, this goes on for years. This goes on for centuries. The church coming into an area, converting people to Christianity, and then changing their culture. Let me tell you a story. You want a story? You got time for it? One of my mentors was a guy named 6'5", was one of the ministers at a church. And she was what we called a living link missionary. We were her total support. She lived in Papua New Guinea, which is, there are still headhunters in Papua New Guinea. So Martha moved to Papua New Guinea to introduce the people of this particular province or this particular area to Jesus. And one of the first things she had to do was learn to live like them. So she lived in the same kind of hut that they lived in, which was not easy to do. So she does that. They do not have a written language, or they did not have a written language. And so Martha develops a written language for them. So now they can speak it and they can write it. And then what? Yeah. There's still languages in the world like that are spoken and not written. And this was one of them. So she creates an alphabet. She creates a language, a written language. And she's able to translate part of the New Testament so that the people could read it. And it's not until she does all that she begins to teach these people about who Jesus was. Matt, okay, again, Matt's 6'5". Most people that live in Papua New Guinea, who's the shortest person in here?
Me.
Yeah. Most people in Papua New Guinea are about 5 feet tall. Male, female. And it has to do with their diet. Same's true in Mexico. You go to certain parts of Mexico and you see people that are incredibly short because of what they eat. There's not a lot of protein in their diet. So Matt and a group of our men go to Papua New Guinea. They fly on an airplane. 24 hours later, they land, and they build Martha a house. Now, when I talk about a house, it was just elevated. It had a wooden frame, had a roof. A lot of it was open to the outside because that's just how you live. And the chief of this village fell in love with Matt. Again, Matt's 6'5". This fella came up to maybe his hip. I mean, really short. And the last night they had this banquet. And they brought out a cassowary egg. Now, you may not know what a cassowary is, but think ostrich. So they brought about the size of a football. They bring out this egg, and they put it in front of Matthew. And they crack the top off of it, so it is a raw egg. And Matt is told, the chief is so excited, Matt has been told, this egg is a gift from the chief. You have to eat it. Raw. So Matt looks at it and says, I can't eat that. They said, oh, if you don't, you will crush the chief. You will hurt his feelings terribly. So Matt told me that story, and I said, well, Matt, what'd you do? He said, what do you think I did? I ate the egg. Actually, he said, I ate the first bite, and then I shared it with everybody else, which was the proper thing to do. And Martha still lives there, by the way, and that was 40 years ago. She's been in she's more Papua New Guinean than she is American. But had Matt been so bothered by culture, by their culture, he would have never done that. Europeans at this time, those who were in the church at this time, I don't think there's so much concern with converting people to Christianity as they are converting people to be Europeans. That's just my opinion, and that and 89 cents will get you a cup of coffee at the Jet Food store. It's not worth much, my opinion. All right. So what happens to the Spanish missions? Well, they've got a big problem. Juanillo has awakened something in the Native Americans, a desire to be free from the Spaniards. It shows weakness in the Spanish missions. And who's already there kind of lurking, waiting? Great Britain. And the alligators. Again, there's a weakness, but also there has been a massive decrease in the Indian population. And just to kind of put it in a way we can understand it, there are less customers now. There are less people to be converted to Christianity because of that great decline. And so there's very little need for missions anymore. Remember, they have been enslaved by the Spaniards. Some of those have been enslaved by the Spanish missions, which you think about that for a minute and it should bother you. Spanish missions find that because the Indians are becoming somewhat stronger, or more bold, I guess is a way to put it, that they cannot move further inland. And so they're now all along the coast, and they really can't move into Georgia at all. And there's fear among the missionaries. So, you're in Spain, you're a missionary, or you're asked to go to this new world, to what is now Georgia, and serve as a missionary. And what do you say? No. I heard what happened. I know what's going on there. I'm not going. And so there are fewer and fewer missionaries that are willing to come and live among the Wally and the Mocama Indians. All right. Boop. So, this is kind of an essential question. Which European countries competed for settlement in the Southeastern United States?
Great Britain, France, and Germany.
Spain. Come on, Sawyer. Yeah, it is. Those three European countries compete for settlement in the Southeast. I believe that's Columbus and his crew. And again, I can guarantee you, they did not look like that after 2 months crossing the Atlantic Ocean. They were not that healthy looking. So, what motivates these three countries? Spain, England, and France. What is it that is their motivation? We saw the Spanish mission purpose or motivation. That was to convert people to Christianity. But as nations, what motivated these countries to explore and to conquer? Say that again. Okay. More power. Anybody else? Okay. Land. That goes along with the power. I'm going to give you an alliteration. Anybody know what an alliteration is? English class, real quick.
Alliteration is like the
Repetition of a letter or... Yeah. Okay. So good. So here's our alliteration. Why did they explore? Why did they conquer? Really simply, God, glory, and gold. You ought to be able to remember that. God, glory, and gold. Why did they explore North America? They're wanting to spread their religious belief. That's the God part of it. As Noah said, they want more power. I think Allie said more land. So they want a larger empire. They want more power. That's the glory aspect of it. And then finally, there's the gold. They want greater wealth. more resources. It's not just gold, although that is one of the things they're trying to find. They're trying to increase their trade with Asia. And here's the thing. If you have more resources, you have more to trade. And so they want things from Asia that they can't get from anywhere else. And North America, South America are filled with natural resources. So their motivation is pretty simple. God, glory, and gold. And you know what? We're going to stop right there. Is that okay with y'all? Natalie, is that okay with you? Okay. Yeah, help yourself.